Hello everyone, Eugene Segovia here with EZStudRack. I'm going to show you how you can build this huge storage for your paper. A lot of people ask, how can I build something using your EZStudRack? Well, I am going to show you in this video how anybody, when I say anybody, if you're not good with tools when it comes to woodworking, I have got this video that I made from start to finish using some of the simplest tools and cheapest tools that you could buy. Normally I would use a table saw for this. Table saws cost $600. We don't need that. Minimal investment, quick and easy, and let me show you how we built this for under $100. And it's an ultimate storage because we go 83 inches high, 15 inches wide. If we wanted to go higher, we could. If we wanted to go wider, we can have double this section. So don't forget to subscribe. Now, if you want to look at the full-length video, just continue on here listening and viewing. And if you need to, if you want to speed it up, go to your settings and set it to 1.5, 1.25, 2 times the playback speed, and you can pretty much fast forward through this entire video and stop wherever you need to stop and rewind and all that. Just to give you an idea of what to expect, I'm going to show you the material you got to purchase, the equipment you got to use. I'm even going to go as far as showing you what saw blade to buy, how to swap out the saw blade. I'm just kind of fast forwarding through this step by step. A lot of people might know this, but for those of you who don't, I'm going to show you step by step what you can do. And I'm really fast forwarding through this. And I'm trying to do this at the same time as trying to hold this in video, so please bear with me. But we'll go through here, show you step by step, and I'm really just going really quick through this. That's one example. I'll come over here and swapping it out, how to put it in, what things to look out for, what to measure, what every step to measure, some of the tools that come in handy, little tips and tricks, how to set your blade height and everything for the safest way to do this, what to look for, again, how to cut, what to look for on the saw. So again, if you have never picked up a tool, keep looking at this video and you'll be amazed at how easy this stuff is. Plus that circular saw there, it's a good investment. You could use it to cut a lot of other things, especially other EZStudRack projects. Eugene Segovia here, EZStudRack. Thank you for joining me here to watch the step-by-step video. Don't forget, you can always hit your playback speed. You can make it 1.5, 2 times the speed. Now what we have here is we have a sheet of plywood. This sheet of plywood is a 4x8 sheet by 1/4 inch thick. It's about $22 cost at any hardware store. And we have 2 8-foot long pieces of 1x10s by 96 inches. Now this circular saw you could buy at Walmart, hardware stores for just a little under $40. Now this to me is probably the least expensive and easiest way to cut your shelves. Now remember, my goal for this video is to have just anybody be able to do this with the very minimal investment in tooling. You could easily take this piece of plywood and have somebody cut it for you for the size that you need and cut everything for you. But the goal here is for you to be self-sufficient and say, hey, I can do this myself. Okay, for starters, what we're going to do is we got to replace this blade on the circular saw. It's a 7.25 inch diameter, 140 tooth blade. I'm trying to point here showing that it says plywood on there. It's kind of hard to see, but this one right here is meant for a rougher cut, 60 tooth blade. So we're just going to swap these out. So the saw comes with the wrench, but I tend to have lost this one. So I'm just using a regular 1/2 inch wrench, and that screw comes right off. And as you're taking it off, I'm trying to hold this thing and at the camera angle, so I'm kind of struggling. Normally I would have it on the ground, it'd be easy to take off. But once you take that screw off, there's that little washer, funky shaped washer. Take it off, and then you just slide that blade out. Slide it through, and then we'll come in and insert the other blade. Okay, as we come in, insert this other blade, I want to point one thing out. These blades come with a hole, like you see here. Now that hole is designed to help you tighten this blade. Now as I'm moving this guard out of the way, I slip the blade in, and I'm spinning it around to try to find that little open area so I can stick that screwdriver in. As you could see several spots, but I just totally missed it. I was trying to find that hole, and come to find out I didn't even need to find it. But here I am still trying to spin it around. Go ahead and put that washer, trying to do this with one hand, and hold the saw with the other is kind of hard, but it's a lot easier when you just have it sitting on the ground or on a table. So we'll put that screw in there. Of course, it'd help if I didn't drop it. So as we pick up the screw, we'll screw it on. Now once it tightens, that blade will want to turn, so you won't be able to tighten it anymore. That's where this Phillips screwdriver comes in handy. It sticks in, it stops the blade from turning, and then you just go in there and tighten it. It doesn't have to be real tight, but tight enough that it's not going to come loose. Okay, so I just kind of do a quick check to make sure that it's in there secure. So now we bring the cardstock out. I had several different sizes, but this is what I hear the most common size. It's a 12 by 12. That yellow thing you see there is called a square, and all it does is used to help draw a straight line across that board where I'm going to cut it. And that line is perpendicular or 90 degrees from that edge of that board. Now without going through all the details, the cardstock's 12 inches, just double checking it. And then I'll go in and measure the EZStudRack's 1/2 inch thick, if you want to call it. And there's 2 EZStudRacks. Long story short, one, I check the end there, make sure it is square. That checked out square. Most boards nowadays are square. And I'll measure out 15 inches. And that's where we'll make the first cut. Now remember, you got to cut each board. So one board you cut 15 inches, then you'll come back, and the other board you have to cut 15 inches. And that's going to be used for the top and the bottom of the frame. This is the speed square. Now after I use that yellow square there, I would prefer the speed square. You can buy them pretty much anywhere, but it lines up real easy along the edge of the board. You draw a straight line, you flip it over, you line up your line, and then now you have your line that you're going to follow. I kind of double check with the cardstock just to make sure that there's going to be plenty of room there. Just remember it's going to be 15 inches. Okay, now we'll go to the circular saw again. And I always like setting my depth of the blade to what it's going to cut, plus a little bit more so it cuts through the entire piece of wood. So on the side here, it's got markings. It's got a little lever there. You loosen up that bottom, whatever you want to call it, rest. And as you move up and down, you can see that little arrow that's moving. And we'll set it to this not the plywood, but the 1x4 is actually 3/4 inches thick. So I set it to 1 inch. So that way when it cuts, it just sticks just slightly below the board. Now we could move it all the way up and then cut through, but then you got to worry, make sure that board is sitting off the ground and it's not going to cut anything else underneath it. And there you go. It's just got a little bit more of a cut than the depth of that board. And I just flip that board over and set it on top of that other board. That way it's kind of off the ground, so that blade does not cut anything else but the board that I'm trying to cut. You also need to make sure that this right here is on the 0 mark. This can turn this way and that way. That way it's cutting at perfectly 90 degrees. You have to make sure to put safety glasses. These little marks up front. So you can see your blade's going to hit. A lot of times what I like doing is just set your blade right there. Like that. And then you see where your mark's at. So as I'm cutting, I'm following that front guide, and when it gets close to the end, that guide is going to come off of the board. So then I have to look on the side where the blade's actually cutting till I finish the cut. Set it down, wait for that blade to stop turning, and there you have it. What we're going to do is we're going to do one board, cut one board, but then you got to cut the other one with the same distance. So this board is one that was cut. I'm going to sit it aside. Bring the other board around. Just use the same one. Just line up the edges. Mark it. Make sure your line is off. The other board, repeat. where it's cut. Same distance, same length. These are the box nails that we're going to use, just a 4D by 1.5 inches long. Just marking this right there. Show the edge. I'm doing the same thing with the other one. And in the middle, I mark the middle, that's where I'm going to put the nail. Speed square. Mark that middle line. Put the nails in. Now, for those who have nail guns, this is really easy. But what I'm trying to do is make it to where you can invest a minimal amount of money on equipment. As you can see, there's a line right there, and I'm just going to stick your nails on that line. And we're going to start it this way. We'll just do 3. Yeah, got it started. What we'll do is do the same thing for this other one. Just line up again the edges. Something just didn't seem right. Also, you can measure it. It's going to be 3/8 from the edge. All make mistakes, so I marked it, but didn't quite mark far enough from the edge, or too far from the edge. Anyway. We're going to measure 3/8 from that edge, and that's where we're going to put the nails in. Or if you want another quick little way of doing it, yeah, you can just see the line, and you could just mark it like this. That's where you want the nail to go in. You really want to aim for the middle, which would be 3/8. Normally I would do this on top of a workbench or something, but if you don't have a workbench, then you can't really do that. So I'm just kind of doing it as if I'm trying to invest the minimum amount of money to make this happen. All right. Then, if you notice, when you tap that nail with the hammer, the board moves. So what I try to do is I try to tap it a little bit and then till it seats itself. And then once it seats itself, you can go ahead and hammer the rest of it in. And once the first one's in, the rest of them makes it right. There we have it. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Repeat the same thing. Line up the edge. One thing I want to point out that if you want to check the square, it's not going to be perfectly square. Now don't worry about that. I mean, this thing, it can move back and forth. Once we nail the piece of plywood on here, that'll take care of all that. Now the plywood's come perfectly 90 degrees. So, or square, whatever you want to say. So I'm going to take this guy. Line it up to one of the square edges. As you can see, that edge over there is not quite lined up. You know, it's a lot easier with two people, but you know what? Sometimes you don't have two people. So you have to do what you have. if you notice, the board is a little bowed. So you can't guarantee that this board is not bowed. So I'm just going to take a series of a bunch of little marks and mark this edge over here. So what I'm doing is I'm going to set the blade depth, but always remember to unplug. You would hate to have your hand down there and then accidentally turn the saw on. It's a good idea to always unplug for safety's sake. And we'll just repeat the same thing we did last time. Flip that little lever up, and we're going to move the blade to the right position for that 1/4 inch plywood. So as you can see, I am using the side of the board or the edge of the plywood, and I'm moving it till it hits the concrete or till it hits the ground there, and then I just adjust it just a little bit deeper. That way it'll cut all the way through the piece of plywood. So what I'm doing here, I'm just setting the piece of plywood on top of this box so I can just go ahead and cut and not have to worry about lifting it off the ground. So I just move it forward. I make sure that the line is in the middle, and when I lift it up like that, I look down it just to make sure that that line is cutting. There's nothing underneath it when I cut. Okay, I went ahead and stopped the blade, or turned it off, and now I'm going to move the board back so I can continue cutting. I pull it back till I see the edge of that board on the other side. So what happened here is the plug right there where it connects got stuck on the edge of the board. So sometimes it's a good idea to make sure that you got plenty of cord or it doesn't get stuck on the edge. Okay, if you notice, I went right past the line, and I'm come in and cut this portion. Always make sure the cord's out of the way. Now if you notice, since we set the depth of our saw, our circular saw, we barely missed that. But that's okay, because this cover will cover it all up. you get your package of EZStudRack, it comes with screws. And these screws will not be used on this 3/4 inch plywood, or 3/4 inch, because they'll go through. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use them to screw this piece of plywood in. Now, like I mentioned before, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line up this edge right here. Screw this guy in. Okay, now I need to line this edge up. That way it's perfectly straight along that edge. Now go ahead and put 3 of them. Try not to strip them because you're going into the edge of the wood. And I like to set the torque on these things just to where it barely goes and it starts clicking. Okay. So as you can see, if you look down this thing, see how far off it is? So the nails on the ends help hold the board, but this plywood on the piece of back is what's going to really get you the strength. So now I'm going to come over here to this edge. Line it up. Now we're done. So we'll just continue along the edge. Doesn't have to be a lot of them. Now, if you want to use all these, you can. It's just going to make it stronger. Now remember, when you put these on here, if you go too far in, you're not going to hit your sideboard. Now what we'll do is I'm going to start cutting the little pieces. We'll install the EZStudRacks. So we got to get these, because the screws that came with the package are too long. So when you screw in your thing, it's going to stick out a little bit. Not a lot, but enough to hurt. So since we're going to be installing EZStudRacks, we need to measure distance. Looks like 13 1/4 would work. 13 1/4. You always write this down. 13 1/4. Well, this edge is square. Oh, look at that. Exactly 13 1/4. And then the paper is 12. And that's 12. I'm going to use a tape measure as a straight line. I'm going to bring this off the ground for me to cut it. I just grab a scrap piece of wood. If you don't have a piece of wood, you can put your EZStudRack down there. There is a right side and a wrong side to cut. So if you're the part you want to drop off, you want your saw on the opposite side. tight. So we're going to trim it off a little bit more. We'll make it 13 1/8. Now we cut our first piece. We're going to test EZStudRacks. I want the paper to be angled. So if I come in here with the EZStudRack, depends where I put it, determines where my paper's going to lie. So the further out I come with the EZStudRack, so this thing can go up or down like this. But if you put it the furthest forward you put it, you want to be able to have it in there. So you put your paper. So that looks like a good dimension, a good depth. So we'll do 1.5 inches. Measure 1.5 inches. Inch and a half. Doesn't come out the other end. You'll skip 1, 2 holes and go on the next one. Come from the bottom, 1, 2 holes, and go on the next one. And we'll repeat on the other side. Now if you want to make it flat like this, you can, but you got to have some EZStudRacks on the back. Here I like it being at an angle. That's something different. All the way to the front. The trick to using a drill, and again, if you don't know this, or if you know this, then you can just fast forward. But you always got to put pressure on the screw. So if you don't put pressure on it and push hard as you're drilling in, you're just going to strip that edge. That'll just strip. So get in there. Get it lined up, push hard as you screw them in. Okay, so now, let's see what happens here. Stays down now. Here's a side view of how the shelf is at an angle. screws you won't be using. This board that I just measured was cut at a hardware store in half, so you have that option as well. Remember, what you're seeing here is I'm just doing a lot of measuring. This is the first time that I've gone through this process, so I'm kind of trying to think in my head what's the best option for anyone to cut this piece of plywood. Right. Right. 13 1/8. 13 1/8. Now, if you have a yardstick, this is where it comes in handy. Just line up the lines. If you have a table saw too. But my goal is to be able to show people they can do it with just minimal investment in equipment. Okay, so we measured, got a line. We know this is a straight edge right here. So I'm going to take advantage of this straight edge. I'm going to mark another line right past it as a reference. And do the same thing on the other side. As a reference. And I'll show you why after we cut this. What I'm going to do, use a broom. The broom's going to go in. Pick up and make sure the broom's on the other side. since we got our reference line here, we can measure and see how accurate our cut is. So it looks like it's 1 inch and a 1/16. 1 inch and a 1/16. Let me just take this guy. Walk along here. The straight edge. It looks like a pretty straight cut, so I'm going to put the straight edge on this side. So what we're doing is we're measuring every 12 inches. So you got 12, 36, 48, 60, and we're going to mark it twice. I use the same straight edge on the end. And we'll mark centers. We'll cut right down the middle. Okay, so as you can see, I got both boards. I'm going to line them up, and I marked every foot, and I always like putting a little arrow like that, because that way I know where the center is. And I put a line through the center, but I measured from one end. That way, if I do mess up this cut a little bit, I'm not using this cut to reference the next cut, because then it kind of throws everything off. And here we have, this is an 8-foot long sheet of plywood, so I'm able to get 8 pieces times 2, 16. Since I gotta set my depth, always unplug. Come in here. Doesn't have to be exact, but as long as you're deeper than the 2 boards. All right. our pieces cut. You can sand them. Now, normally, I would be cutting these outside, but I'm trying to get the lighting right and everything, so we're doing it inside a garage. It gets a little dusty. For this demonstration, what we can do. You'd have plenty of storage for your paper. If you want more storage, you just got to cut some more of these out. You can actually buy these in a 4x8 sheet, and you can ask the people just to cut it in half. When you cut it in half, you might be able to, some hardware stores have it, a miter saw where you can use and cut these to the right size as well. So anyway, if you want more storage, you just got to cut more plywood. "83 inches high by about 15 inches wide. Now, what I do recommend when you do store it or push it up against your wall, go ahead and put a couple of screws into a stud, find a stud. That way, once you load it heavy with paper, it won't tend to fall over.